Welcome back. President Cyril Ramaphosa says climate change is as much an economic issue as it is scientific. He delivered the keynote address at the opening of a three-day Climate Resilience Symposium in Pretoria earlier today. The president telling delegates that extreme weather patterns, including drought, have impacted South Africa's economic growth.
These adverse weather conditions temporarily brought container ship traffic to a complete halt at the port of Cape Town when we could least afford it, as we are rebuilding our capacity in as far as making our ports more efficient and effective. Rough seas resulted in cargo vessels losing containers overboard and others being extensively damaged. Now, the port of Cape Town is the country's second largest container terminal, and in the wake of what's been happening in the northern part of our continent, in the Suez Canal and all that, many countries and companies have been redirecting their cargo or their vessels right round the Cape, and this weather impact has been quite negative for us.
Well, Newzroom Afrika's Ntokozo Khumalo joins us live from that meeting in Pretoria for more. Ntokozo, what else did the president have to say, especially in the face of what is an incredibly important week for him?
Hi, Michelle. Well, as we just heard from that soundbite there, it really has been around the focus of the cost of climate change on the South African economy. The president obviously pointing out the setback that climate change had at the ports, reversing some of the progress made in really relieving some of the bottlenecks that we've seen, particularly at the Cape Town port. So it was really a matter of telling the cost of climate change, and once again highlighting that South Africa needs to move swiftly, but also reminding industry stakeholders that moving swiftly is still at the country's own terms, and that it has the sovereign right to decide how that just energy transition takes place. And the focus really is on ensuring the famous words by President Cyril Ramaphosa is ensuring that economic growth leaves no one behind, and he highlighted that today as well. So industry stakeholders in some of the closed sessions now looking at ways to really improve that coordinated work when it comes to the just energy transition, specifically, around smaller projects in rural township communities and in areas such as Mpumalanga, that is, the coal belt of South Africa, where that just energy transition will need to take place, Michelle. But we did hear as well from the United States, and of course, some of that contention around how fast we should move in the just energy transition, that pressure from the global West around how fast the country should go. The US once again committing and recommitting that 1 billion rand that will go towards funding smaller projects that will get off and going towards that just energy transition. Let's take a listen to information around that funding.
Through the Just Energy Transition Partnership, we are mobilizing significant financial resources to support South Africa's progress from coal to renewable energy, ensuring that this transition is both just and inclusive. This partnership addresses the social and economic impacts of energy transition and helps South Africa meet its nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement. For our part, the United States contribution to the Just Energy Transition Partnership includes $1 billion that will not add a single cent to the sovereign debt of the Republic of South Africa. It is $1 billion that is pledged in the form of loan guarantees to private sector actors to take on projects to support the just energy transition. And this $1 billion in loan guarantees is ready for deployment today.
So, Michelle, as you heard there, we're going to be saying that it's large number that the U.S. is pledging. We also heard pledges from the likes of Switzerland to the tune of about 8.5 billion rand, and that's really phasing in that just energy transition plan. President Cyril Ramaphosa also announced, at the tail end of his keynote address, that there will be the just energy transition plan that will be, or financing model actually, Michelle, that will be launched later on this afternoon once industry stakeholders have really had those discussions around how to close those gaps in the country's just energy transition. So we'll have those details around this financing model a little bit later on today. But the National Treasury already highlighting that it's not, something that the National Treasury will have to find the financing for from the budget, alluding to the midterm policy statement, but saying that its role is to ensure that all this grant funding from the likes of the US and Switzerland will actually be used effectively and go towards those projects that need the funding the most, particularly in the private sector, but also some of those projects with government. So we'll get a little bit more details on exactly how the financing model will work a little bit later on, Michelle.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting, isn't it? And we'll need to get that kind of detail that you mentioned, Ntokozo, especially in light of the US House voting just last week to pass legislation requiring a full review of Washington's relationship and bilateral ties with Pretoria, the US and South Africa, and its relationship now in question. How sure can we be of this 1 billion rand in the form of loan guarantees? $1 billion, pardon me.
Well, Michelle, President Cyril Ramaphosa, the National Treasury and other stakeholders in the presidency, specifically in the presidency Climate Commission, really digging in their heels when it comes to the importance of South Africa having that sovereign right to decide the pace that it wants to take its just energy transition strategy. And really, the sense that I got in the room was that those different stakeholders, including the World Bank, might actually be hearing South Africa's cries of ensuring that as we move in this just energy transition, that no one is left behind. So the US and Switzerland and so on, highlighting and alluding to the fact that they seemingly do see South Africa's point that moving too fast in this just energy transition could certainly affect the poorest of the poor in the country, so that we should be phasing out. But remember, Michelle, we do have that just energy transition plan, which is, over 5 years, 2023 to 27, trailing really how we are meeting those targets. So there is sort of a phased out program already, and it does seem, by the sense that I got in the room, that stakeholders are getting closer to a meeting point. But of course, those geopolitical tensions, Michelle, something that industry stakeholders from National Treasury and the presidency will have to caress, really, to ensure that we do see that funding coming in, because that funding is important to ensure that the fiscus is not under pressure here in South Africa, but that we do have alternative financing models to see that just energy transition take place.